I've still got a couple of videos to push out from Steam Next Fest February 2025. Some of these videos will be slightly shorter because lots of the demos get revoked after Steam Next Fest and I'd lost the license to actually play the demo and get the impressions. But I still wanted to put out these videos because there's some great games to be found. These are all card and board games, and I'm kicking off with Wizard Hand. And I describe this as a solitaire roguelike deck builder. In the centre of the screen, you'll see a solitaire layout of cards, and whilst they kind of have magical elements, you can think of the magical elements as like card suits. And then down at the bottom of the screen, you've got your own deck, which you need to then use to remove the solitaire decks by mixing and matching. And that could be by putting fire suits together so that you can create a combo that way, or it could be a mixing and matching of like putting the kings together or the aces together or the queens together or the sixes together. And as you do this, you're scoring points, very similar to a balattroing of a roguelike deck builder, and you're needing to score a certain amount of points in a run as you clear the cards from the deck to do well, and you kind of score more points through comboing move after move and so on and so forth. The wizarding element comes from the fact that in the shop and other things that you can kind of trigger means that you will have either objects or crystals that you can then take cards from your deck and fuse them so that they can either become stronger to score more points, or maybe you need them to change suit, for example, and become, instead of like a dark suit, to a light suit, so that you can then score more points and clear what's on the board. And so you're constantly thinking about how you can shapeshift your deck of magical cards to therefore get the score that you need. I found this really engrossing. There was lots of different choices to pick from to kind of move forward with the game, and it was just thoroughly enjoyable. So it stayed on my wish list and I really liked this one. Next up is Canvas the board game, which I'm assuming is a digital adaptation of a real board game because it certainly plays like it. And this is for 1 to 4 players. In this game, you've got a collection of cards going from right to left, a bit like a production line, and you spend artistry points or creation points or creativity points to buy these cards. And you'll be buying them not necessarily based on how pretty the card looks, but what's going on the key towards the bottom of them. That key calls out certain colours or certain styles and repetitions, whether there's symmetry, whether there are hierarchy of being a foreground or a background. And each game is set up with a different way how you can potentially score points depending on the cards of what is considered art in this run of the game. So it could be that you might want to try and get one of each of the colour palettes so that you can have like a real variety of things. Or it could be that you're looking to have as many triangle symbols in your key as possible for repetition. There's all different ways of playing, and it will be randomised for whatever your playthrough is. And then once you've bought these cards into your card deck, you'll then try to construct a canvas image with 3 or 4 of your real cards in your deck to try and score as many points as possible. Once you've then, in the demo at least, done 3 paintings, each player individually, then tot up your scores and see who is the one with the most strongest scoring canvases. And that's how the game runs. I really enjoyed this because it felt artistic, but actually there were proper rules to the game. And sometimes you can get away with like picking up the toot that no one else wants for cheap, and then having lots of options to try and build a really strongly scoring canvas. And other times you need to kind of push the risk and spend your creativity points to pull in something big and juicy for exactly what you want. But other people can kind of see what you're doing and block your moves too, so there was a lot of strategy to it. I just really enjoyed this one too. So it may not be for everyone, but I found this enjoyable and engaging, and so Canvas definitely stayed on my wish list. The next game is Keep the Heroes Out, and this is a 1 to 4 player dungeon defense game where you all work collaboratively to try and stop the heroes coming in and stealing all the loot that you've stolen because you're playing the baddies. This is a mixture of card and board game because the board is made up of different rooms that you need to defend, and inside each room will be various different treasures. But each of those rooms come with unique traps and abilities. And so what you're doing with your turns and points for each turn that you can kind of move or trigger an action on is move to the exact room that you want to get to, trigger that specific action. So it could be that you've set up a trap so that when a hero comes in their turn they get auto-killed. Or it could be that you move to an area and attack or defend something to stop them from stealing your treasure. And once you've done your move, then the AI heroes will do theirs, and then you plan collaboratively how you've got to stop their heist. As the game goes on, more and more heroes start arriving and trying to overwhelm you, and so you're trying to kind of battle the tide as you go along. I found this game engrossing and fun and very tactical because you never quite know what's going to happen next. However, it does need a better tutorial because I'd played this for a good 45 minutes and was still trying to work out what on earth was going on with some of the nuances in the game design. So if they focus on a better tutorial, this would be an even better if. But there's definitely something good here that I would quite happily spend quite a few hours on trying to go, stop! Playing as the baddie is never always a bad thing. Obergenie is up next, and this game reminds me of competitive Pipe Mania. And if you've ever played Pipe Mania style games before, you're given lots of pipes around the outer edge, and then you're given pipe cards of different shapes and sizes to then pop into the area to keep the pipe going. The difference with Obergenie is what you're trying to do is place the pipes in a way that mean that whatever tiles your opponent has left can't be placed anywhere, because if they end up with nowhere to place their pipe, because it must perfectly seal and keep going so that you can't have like a weird dead end. It always has to slot in perfectly. As soon as someone's got loads of tiles left where they just can't put anything anywhere, they lose the game and the other opponent wins a point. And so it's a bit like a weird tactical pipe Sudoku, I guess. But it worked very well for short, succinct matches. I don't know if this would have massive, long staying power, but I liked the fact that this took something that I've only ever seen in a solitaire world and translated it into a competitive version of it. And from that perspective, it gets a thumbs up, and it's still on my wish list. Next up is K2 Digital Edition, and this is definitely a board game adaptation because I'm aware of that board game, although I've never played it. In this game, what you're doing is trying to ascend up a mountain with different weather effects and day and night cycles with the various cards that you've got available in your deck. Now, depending on the mountain and the weather and what's going on, there'll be certain points as when you ascend past a certain height in the climb that you'll then reach like a critical 0 point. And if you stay in that zone, every time you've spent all of your cards and then end a turn and time moves on, you'll then get like altitude sickness or frostbite, and you'll start to lose health. And that might be quite a lot of health if you're high up the mountain and also in the cold of night and it's snowy and horrible weather. And so what you're trying to do is go up the mountain to collect the points in strategic locations, but timing when you do it so that you can come up, grab the points and then ascend or descend back down as quickly as possible to stay alive, because there's only so much you can do to replenish your health with the cards that you've got. I found this a real great risk versus reward game. I got it wrong a couple of times in my demo and killed a few of my climbers, whoopsie. But it was fascinating to see how this all kind of played out. And when you've got people in multiplayer mode trying to grab different points for themselves to see who wins, it becomes insanely competitive. And so this translates across really well. I think it looks great. It sells the part of K2 and all of that, and this was a definite 2 thumbs up from me, from someone who's never played the actual original board game. This made a lot of sense and I got it. Next up is a really simple looking game that has quite a lot of good tactical play underneath it, and it's called Spectrum Siege. And this is one of those games where you kind of jump over your opponents, and so long as you've got space to land at the other side, you then capture everything that's sat inside it. And so that's what Spectrum Siege does, kind of rooted in very traditional board game, capture everything. But because you can have like 6 or 7 players potentially all going at the same time, it gets very messy and chaotic very quickly. And because the boards on the game have moving pieces and targets, for example, or special moves that can be triggered. It then goes beyond that kind of basic board game variant, but it can start out and stay like that if you want it to. I found this approachable and fun. Sometimes I didn't quite understand exactly how far I could go with the jump over everyone and land on the other side mechanic, but it gave me good visual cues as to what moves I could and couldn't do, and that kind of helped me decide my next action quite often. And whilst it does look very basic, the raw gameplay elements are here for a decent game, so it stays on my wish list, and I believe it's out now already. Next up is Dirtbag Mahjong, and this offers the traditional Mahjong experience with some good tutorials explaining how you score and what a good hand looks like, which was helpful for me because I've played Mahjong, but I've never really truly dived into the details of what makes good hands, and this game explains the traditional game very well. The key here is Dirtbag mode though, which offers in some additional tricks and like ability to steal other people's tiles or block moves, and it felt like someone threw some rules from Uno into the mix of a Mahjong game, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. There's also, bizarrely, a full story mode with this game, which didn't quite kind of click with me. Strange idea, but off the way you go. But fundamentally, if you're looking for a good Mahjong game that teaches you the basics of Mahjong, but then offers variants of it too, then Dirtbag Mahjong might be something in your vicinity and alley to add to your wish list. Talking of variations on a traditional game, we've got Fortune Avenue, and this is Monopoly with a twist. The idea is that the board is smaller, so you go around quicker. It replaces the get out of jail kind of thing with some slightly different themes, and instead of having free parking, you have the ability to get on a plane and jet around the board, so it kind of speeds up the gameplay slightly. But the crucial twist here is that every 12 rolls of the dice, 2 rules come up, and then players vote on what the rule is that's going to change the game. There's about 30 to choose from, but some of it might be that if you roll doubles 3 times, you don't go to jail or the ice flow as it's called in the game. Or it could be that actually any 5-star hotel then gets taken off the board and back into the pot, and anyone that had that gets 200k or something like that. There's another one where all of the caravans, which is like your first base building that goes on, actually takes enough rent of a 5-star hotel so that you don't have to worry about spending money to upgrade your buildings. You'll get full clout for whatever you've got. And the fact that it keeps changing and adapting is what keeps this game fresh. And I think it's just enough to distinguish Fortune Avenue from the multitude of other cookie cutter Monopoly clones that are out there, because it does keep it a little bit more fresher and more entertaining. Nothing will ever beat Monopoly Party on PS2 though, which is still my ultimate favourite Monopoly game that's out there. Next up is Maximum Apocalypse, and I really enjoyed the time that I had with this demo, but the demo kept crashing multiple times, and then I broke the tutorial multiple times by not doing the right thing. So my gameplay footage and experience with this game is very limited, but I enjoyed what I played. This is for 1 to 6 players, and it plays like a tabletop RPG, where you've got cards that reference different points on a journey while you're trying to survive to a safe point, and each time you move into a new card, there's a new event that takes place, and that might be meeting people or scavenging for new items to survive, or coming across various different like the zombies or other animals or things like that to take place in turn-based RPG style battles using cards that are in your deck and equipping different items. It felt very mechanical from a board game standpoint, because this is I believe an adaptation of a board game that already exists out there. And so some of the quality of life around like things you'd expect to happen in a normal game by like equipping things and stuff like that just felt a little bit more clunky because it was forcing you to do it. But I still enjoyed the whole end-to-end gameplay of what I was doing with this. I just wish the demo had survived a little bit longer for me to enjoy it. Next up is Card Draw, and this is difficult to describe because I'm going to use too many buzzwords for it, but it is a roguelike deck builder that plays like a clicker game, because every time you click the mouse, it's calculating a mathematical sum based on what the cards are that you've got. So it might be +6 times 3 divided by 2 times the nth of to the power of 3 of your third card or something like that. And you're incrementally building up your score over the course of time. And then what you then do is go into the shop in between moves to see whether or not you're going to buy new cards or upgrade existing cards and try and get more things into your deck to make bigger, more powerful sums as you go along to make more of a score over time. The demo gave you 500 moves. I really enjoyed trying to work out from the randomness how I could improve my deck over time and then make the sum even bigger, therefore making even bigger of a number. And it was oddly very Moorish and addictive, but it's very difficult to kind of describe it in a way that doesn't just become like a buzzword ridiculous fest. So take my word for it, card draw was actually really, really cool, and I can see the incremental crowd loving this one. The penultimate game on this list is Digital Revolution, and I describe this as competitive-ish 2048. The idea with this, as it is a single player game, so it's not truly like a PvP competitive game, you have blue tiles that you control and then there'll be red tiles dotted around the screen. And just like 2048, whenever you move tiles in a certain direction, they'll all smash into each other. And if you've got 2 2s, they'll merge into a 4, 2 4s to an 8, 2 8s to a 16, and so on and so forth. And what you're trying to do is to prevent the red tiles from adding up and kind of building up their strength in their score, whilst making sure that your blue ones do. Because at some point what you're going to want to do is then crash your blues into the red ones, and if your tile is higher than theirs, you will then eliminate them by subsuming them. And that's what I mean by it feeling like a competitive 2048 game. It was an interesting twist. I feel like missed a potential amazing twist here by having this as a 2-player competitive board game, but having it as a single-player puzzle variant of what feels like a shove the blocks around board game was still quite cool too. So it's on my wish list, and just an intriguing variant on 2048. The last game on this list is Zhulu Chess, and it's not stayed on my wish list because I found the game to be quite buggy and it didn't really help me understand all of the rules that were in the game, so I felt like it was changing and not being applied consistently, and clearly I was missing something, but the tutorial was really lacking. But there's something here with Zhulu Chess that might appeal to other people, because it reminds me of if chess pieces had health points and then we turned it into a single screen Advanced Wars style turn-based strategy game. And if I was doing a strategy video, which unfortunately I ran out of time to do, this game would probably do better in that list, because it feels more like a turn-based strategy game than a board game, but it is based on chess. So you move pieces onto the board, some of them attack right in front, some of them are a bit more diagonal, some of them have a ring of influence because they're archers so they can't hit anyone in front of them. It's about putting people in the right place and then pummeling attacks as you go. There's then the point of moving your pieces into very specific areas of the board to then take the board and win the game. So almost like taking over a home base, but that seems to be based on a home character rather than a base itself. But because the board is so small, it forces you to be extremely aggressive at all times because there's just nowhere to hide. I like the concept. I didn't like the execution, which is why it's not on my wish list, but it might be good for someone else. And that brings me to the end of the penultimate Steam Next Fest Feb 25 edition of videos. Unfortunately, I had more that I wanted to do in this area, but I just ran out of time and those demos were revoked. And we've just got one more video to go about 3D platformers. So hopefully you found something great here. Thanks for your time, and hope you wishlist something. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.